Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio, audio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I want to talk about the hysteria that's going around Australia at the moment about violent or domestic violence against women, where supposedly the evil men, white men, of course, it's always white men, are allegedly killing their intimate partners. At least that's the claim. It's supposed to be the worst epidemic or a pandemic. Some of the more excitable folks are saying it's the biggest epidemic ever in the history of ever in the whole universe, ever. And it's an emergency. It's a double emergency. It's an emergency of an emergency. Something must be done. And so there are marches and there are protests. There's placard waving. The current affairs and news programs are going into fucking hyperdrive. The NGOs are absolutely screaming. It's very well coordinated and everyone's sort of very much on message here. But so what's happening? Let's just have a look at this now. 10 years or so ago, I was at a dinner and I was sitting next to the media advisor of a regional, this is not a federal, but a regional politician. And her job, as she explained it to me, was to make sure his numbers, the politician's numbers, were good in the polls, and particularly that they were good among women. So she was explaining how his numbers had dropped in the polls among women, and for whatever the reason, he was less popular, or the polling suggested he was. So they came up with a plan, which is the standard go-to, by the way. They came up with a plan to increase his poll numbers, increase his popularity amongst women voters. So she doesn't know anything that I'm particularly interested in this. So she assumes I'm sort of on her side or sharing her views. So she says, so what we did is we just invented this this panic, this emergency about violence against women. So women everywhere are in danger. It's a bit like Nazis are everywhere. Well, men who want to abuse them are everywhere. And this is particularly targeted at white middle class women who've never known the sort of violence that a working class woman in a high crime area would know. These are women who've never experienced this, don't know anyone who has. To them, the most unspeakable domestic violence is where they demand money to go and buy a new land suite, and he says no. That's the height of domestic violence that these women are. But they're also voting women, and they're the most easily. So this media advisor tells me these are the women who most easily persuaded that they not are in danger or have been in danger, but they might be. Well, one day they might be. And so special laws need to exist to protect them. So so they create this mythical phantom of domestic violence, say that it's everywhere, it's misogyny, it's patriarchy. They throw everything at it they can. And then this politician goes, well, I'm going to protect you girls. I won't let those men harm you. I'm a big, hairy-chested fucking he-man, and I'm going to protect you girls from the other men, from those men. Those men won't do anything to you. I'm around. I'm a big, tough guy. Woo. So and so she was saying this is the go-to. If you want to increase the popularity of a politician when their poll numbers are down amongst women, that is the first thing you reach for. So, my question at the time was, but is there an epidemic of violence? Is anything like that actually going on? No, don't be silly. We can always find somebody. We can always find an example somewhere. But no, the whole thing is a propaganda invention to boost the numbers. Now, we've got a situation in Australia where the federal government, the Prime Minister, and his numbers are falling amongst women. So just at the time when the poll numbers suggest he's not doing too good with women voters, and come the next federal election, which is only like a year away, they think, holy fuck, what can we do? I know what we'll do. will create an epidemic, will invent an epidemic of violence against women. Worst it's ever been. It's never been this bad. Women are dying like flies, but from these evil fascist Nazi straight white men. It's them that are doing it. So the whole thing is an invention, and then the NGOs, and there are special government departments are created where women are heading it up, and they're running around saying, yes, patriarchy and misogyny, neo-Nazis, fascists, they're everywhere, under every bed, in every closet, and around every corner. But we're fighting back. The government's giving us money and giving us, so it's just a gravy train for activists. Now, once you look at these government departments, and supposedly now they're being headed up by women who have lived experience of violence at the hands of evil straight white men. So let's have a look at some of these women. Well, the head of one government unit, who is, by the way, very generously paid. She'd be, I don't know, about 30, I guess. What was her previous sort of work? And you've got to dig around a little bit here. But before getting into promoting gender division in the West, before that, she was actually head of the climate change thing. Oh, wow, another activist thing. Before that, she was involved with promoting mass migration. Whoa, another thing here. And before that, she was with an NGO, working out of a university campus, no less, organising student riots and student protests. And you look at each one of the other people involved in the various heads of units and subunits and sections. They're pretty much all from the same activist class. So are they actually involved in this violence against women or protecting women? So no, they're professional agitators and stirrers. They're professional activists. They're nothing to do with protecting women or looking out for women. Far from it. They're nothing other than a professional activist class of people. That's all they are. And today they're creating social, gender, social division. Tomorrow they'll be creating race, social division. After that, it'll be the climate change, and before that, and so on. So that's all these people do. They ping pong around in the NGO activist class, working in government departments, just pushing that same activism. Now, this woman, a number of these women, most of them actually, claim that they have lived experience of violence, but they're nearly all lesbians. So what violence are they talking about? Is it, maybe from childhood that their father told them off or something, or a brother or something? I don't know. Is there another? Is it, were they, because lesbian partner violence is quite high, so it's quite prevalent, certainly by the experts that people who work in that field that I've spoken to. So is it they've been the victims of violence from their lesbian partners? Is that it? We don't know, but it seems odd that you'd have so many lesbians and activists who are running around saying that they're in danger of being sexually assaulted and the like by straight white men. That would seem to be a bit odd. And it's mostly white women. They've got a few token brown and black women in there. So there's a photograph of an NGO that's that this one of these women was in before, and there's say 30 odd people in the management team. I think it was 30 actually, and only 2 of those are black and brown. 20 are women, 8 are men. Most of those men look gay, so it's hardly a representative makeup of society. And these are the people who run around screaming about equity and all this sort of thing. Well, they're not demonstrating it in their little makeup there. And looking at one of the rallies, supposed rallies that took place we have to do something about violence against women, and what do we have to do to prevent women from dying? So I looked at and there's a photograph of the women there, and they're all, they're the renter mob. They're the classic renter mob that you get, from student and university campuses. They weren't all young people, but they're they're public servants, they're academics, they're school teachers, they're your classic renters. They're not representative of the community. How are they getting this time off during the week to attend these marches? And there's nothing grassroots about it at all. Nothing. This is all being put together by again an activist class of people that can whistle up a crowd to wave placards at the drop of a hat. So, looking at the photograph of the people, the older women were, I'd say, almost definitely academics, nearly all lesbians, I would guess, looking at it. None of them, I would imagine, are in danger or ever have been in danger of being sexually assaulted by men. There are a few younger women there. Out of 70 plus in the photograph, there's maybe two women that you look even remotely attractive. So they'd be the only ones that I would imagine would be getting hit on. So the rest, I doubt. Again, some gay men, older men, that sort of thing. So hardly a representative cross section of people there either. So if that's the best they can do, got 70 people, 41 of which are 60-year-old lesbians, are saying, no, that's not telling me anything here. So let's go back. The problem is, though, with this, that it's an epidemic. It's never been worse. It's this and that. I remember, and I managed to dig up and find in 1991. So, we're talking over 30 years ago. A 1991 newspaper article from that. This is like a pre-internet really time, from Australia's leading broadsheet newspaper back in the day, and that, or New South Wales leading broadsheet newspaper, I should say, back in the day, and that is saying that there's an epidemic of violence against women in 1991 that's never been worse. It's worse as ever been. Absolute emergency. The strictest measures are required. Absolute emergency upon an emergency. So, wow. Well, that's over 30 years ago, and it was an epidemic back then. So the amount of women who allegedly were dying at the hands of intimate partners back then is only 2 less per year than it is today. So over 30 years, given that the population has increased by 7 million or something over that time, and there's about the same number, give or take, of deaths supposedly attributed to intimate partner violence. There's the same number of deaths then as there are now. So if it's the biggest emergency ever been, then wow, what was it 30 years ago when it's about the same? Or over 30 years ago when it's about the same. So something doesn't stack up. Clearly it's propaganda. There's no doubting of that. But no one's calling it out. No one is calling it out. There's not a media station. Even the centre-right media stations are jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, it's a terrible thing. Special requirements are needed. It's outrageous. I wouldn't stand by and see that happening to a woman. Would you? Oh, fuck. And people are trying to outdo themselves with the hyperbolic, this, that, and the next thing. So we're talking about, give or take, the same number of deaths. Now, all the adverts and propaganda that I've seen, there's one that I've seen which is a white woman cowering on the floor in the corner like a little child, when she's meant to be a woman, probably in her mid-30s. And there's it's a nice house, nice furniture, and there's a man there, white man, well dressed, as the woman's well dressed. There's a white man there with a closed fist, and she's cowering in fear by this evil, straight white fucking Nazi, fascist, misogynist, patriarchal male. That's the propaganda. So let's sort of try and look at the reality of this. Now, certainly by my research, anyway, of the supposed, I'll round the numbers off to you just to make it easy, but out of the supposed 50 intimate partner violence, and just on 3/4 of those happened in remote regions of Australia, in areas where you're lucky to find even a single white person. So that's that. Now, the rest, with the exception, I think, of 3%, the rest were acts, murders that took place in some of the poorest crime-ridden areas of the country. Outside of this is city areas. Now I'm talking of the rural areas are the biggest category by far, where hardly any white people are, and then the cities where you go to the highest crime rate, where crimes of all sorts are off the charts, whether it be motor vehicle theft or shop stealing or muggings or you name it. That's the where there are shootouts in the street, drug gangs shooting each other, this sort of stuff. This is the high crime areas, and that's where the rest of pretty much the rest. So out of 50, you have two where it's actual middle class white people. The advertising is just it's only middle class white people. It doesn't happen anywhere else. Only they are being accused of this. But in fact, 2 out of 50 are the middle class white people. And in both of those situations, both of them, there was a very strained divorce going on where the guy was going to be financially ruined for the rest of his life. Huge stakes there. He's never going to see his kids again, this sort of stuff. So you would expect that in such a drama charged situation, there would be a likelihood of, discord, whether it leads to violence or indeed something worse. But in the passion heat of the moment of those sort of things, so we can't say, well, this is just violence against women. This is men wanting to. So now, what are the remedies, though? This is the probably more interesting. Now, the remedies. I mean, assault and murder are already crimes and have been forever. So if you assault somebody, whether it's the folks down the road or the people around the corner, or your intimate partner, or whoever, it doesn't matter. Assault is a crime, and it should be dealt with in the proper channels. The police, and charges laid, the matter is heard in court, and evidence is tested, and if shown to be guilty, someone would suffer those penalties as prescribed under law. Nothing wrong with that at all. So why must there be special protections just for women? Because murder and assault are already crimes. So they're like there's special hate crimes and special racist crimes, special protections for students to feel safe. There are already laws on the books that fully and absolutely and comprehensively deal with this. It's a crime to assault or murder somebody, as indeed it should be. So why are special laws needed? Well, the activists claim that there should be. Now, this is all to create social division, gender division in this case, and that gender division's been going on for, well, at least 1990 or earlier. I remember seeing these articles in US newspapers about how women are being, domestic violence is everywhere and this sort of thing. This was in the United States in the 1980s when I first noticed it. So, and it was already insane propaganda at the time. In fact, I think the whole thing kicked off in the United States. I didn't realize it back then. Of course, as later on I realized that this was all part of the globalist shtick to create gender division and then race division and so on. So they're systematically going through they started with gender division, then it was race division, then it was like climate change. So they keep on introducing new ones all the time and then trying to gin up the old ones. Like this violence against women, it's been around in Australia for at least 35 years. So now I remember going back at the time, this is going back in the early 90s, I remember looking at some of the articles in the newspapers thinking, this can't be right. I mean, if it's as widespread as they say, I would know somebody, I would have heard about it. But so I ended up, in one of the articles, there was a professor, so-and-so says. So I contacted the professor because I suspected something was going on. So I contacted the professor. It was in an Ivy League Australian university, and she was, it turns out, a lesbian activist, very prominent one too. So I don't know why you would go to a lesbian activist who was a gender studies academic, no less, to do research on something. And it was clear when I was talking to her that she had never spoken to someone who did not share her point of view, who did not share her activism, or at least was prepared to fully go along with it. So she actually shared information with me that, and I went and met her, and she gave me a copy of, I don't know if it's the only report, but one of them. And within the first 3 or 4 paragraphs, I could shoot a million holes in it. And so I'm thinking, well, why would they? Why? I mean, she's giving, this is the stuff she's giving to journalists and politicians and various other people, public servants, and they all seem to be going along with it. Whereas I'm a layperson, I'm not involved in this shit day to day. Yet I can look at it straight away and see that as studies go, as information gathering goes, as reporting goes, that this is bullshit, and I can see that straight away. For example, things like that, they only go to the highest crime areas of the country. And even then, the evidence they collect is anecdotal. So they don't say that they've been to the highest crime rate areas of the country. They don't say that, where car theft is 25%, one in 4 cars is stolen or taken for a joyride every year. They don't say that sort of thing in the report. They just pretend like it's just an ordinary middle class everyday suburb. So they go to these high crime rate areas, whether it's rural, reservations and things like that, or high crime areas, the government housing areas in cities where unemployment has been, across multiple generations type thing. And they go to those areas, collect supposed data, which I think they gin up anyway, and then say, well, it's the same all across the country. It's clearly it's not. The crime rates in those areas are off the charts. As soon as you move out of those areas, the crime rates plummet, as they would in all areas of crime. But they pick those areas and say, well, 1 in every 2 women are assaulted. Bingo, and it's the same area, which it's not. These are outrageous, blatant lies and misrepresentations. But it's the sort of things that they claim. So what do they want to do? How are we going to stop all this violence against women? Well, they want extra laws. They want women to be able to leave the household at any time and without any evidence, without any proof at all, to be able to access free food, accommodation, clothing, to be effectively go to another fully kitted out dwelling, with children and with money, and be able to get money and services and so on, but no evidence needed. And all she needs to do is go, I'm escaping from a violent man, bingo, and suddenly that just opens up the spigot, and services, money, and handouts will just fall upon her from on high, like a torrent. And they want that. Then they want, and this is the probably the bigger issue, that the way to stop this is, well, it's all these misogynist, patriarchal men. We've got to stop misogyny. Evil, straight white Nazi men, Nazis everywhere, and we have to stop them and control them. Well, wow, what's the court? We have to have special training in schools to tell men not to be misogynist, murdering Nazis. Well, wait, stop. That's been going on in schools for over 35 years. What is not happening that needs to happen now? 35 years of indoctrination and feminist, lesbian lies hasn't worked. Well, why will it work now? That doesn't matter. We just have to double, triple down. If they get once a week a lecture, then we have to make sure it's twice a week. We have to make sure that every teacher is telling them every day that they're evil Nazis. That'll fix it. The next thing they claim is that the reason men are violent is because of porn. Men are looking at too much porn, and that makes them violent towards women, because if they look at porn, they don't respect women as their moral superiors. So if only men would respect women as being the moral superiors, then they wouldn't, as a small child might to a mother. And if we can just reduce men to the mental status and moral status of small children and women as the adults, then men will behave better because they'll respect women more. I mean, you've got to be kidding. This is insane. I mean, that's what the sort of shit that these people are putting about. What about young girls watching porn? No, that doesn't matter. It's only when men do it, it's bad. or boys. So, and you look through their proposals to remember, they're talking about drastic action to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So they want all men relegated to the status of children permanently for their whole lives. Think about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a movie with Jack Nicholson. So every man must have a frontal lobotomy, which will make them tame, controllable, and so on. And then every woman can be in charge, and which is the way it should be, as they see it. And if all men are children and all the women are in charge, then the so-called violence will never happen. Now, the reality is, of course, that the problem isn't straight white men. It never was, and I don't think it'll ever will be. So why do they create this fantasy that the problem is only straight white men, and that why is this pushed exclusively by a professional activist class who, again, are on board with mass migration of brown and black people? They're on board with the climate change and so on and so forth. So none of it's real, and it's all bullshit. But can you find one media outlet who's prepared to say that, or one politician that's prepared to push back? No, you can't. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.